Hi guys, Claudia Boleyn here, and I have just completed week 6 of my BPD therapy. So today we were learning about challenging. Apparently we're going to have 3 different sessions on challenging, because so far we've kind of learned how to identify our own filters and our own issues and the thought processes and urges we get because of those. And now we're getting to the really good / difficult meaty bits where we have to kind of challenge those thoughts, which is obviously the harder work, because it's kind of easier to identify these things. I mean, that's not easy anyway, that's quite tough. But it's even harder when it's all this like negative stuff in your own head that you've believed for so long, having to challenge that yourself. Like, that's quite a scary thought. I think that's probably going to take some time, but I'm really looking forward to it because I do feel like I'm making progress. Like, I can say that about a quarter of the way in, I do feel like it's helping me. Like today I knew it was a therapy day, so I woke up this morning and I actually felt like I was looking forward to it, which hasn't happened before. This is the first time that's happened. I felt like I really needed it today. So obviously for me it's becoming a sort of positive experience, which is good, because to start with it was just full of anxiety, the idea of going there and going through these sessions. But I know now that after a session I'm going to have that little bit more knowledge and confidence. So yeah, I also feel really comfortable and kind of heard. So today I was able to share some more personal stuff with the group, which I won't share on here, but that was good because I've never really done that before. I've never felt comfortable enough to do that, so I was really happy that I did. I've had a kind of rough week. As you saw in my last video, I was kind of really like high up mood-wise for a while, and then I slumped. So after that ended, I just kind of completely slumped and my mood has been so low. And it hasn't helped that like I get really bad period pains, like super bad. I don't know if anyone else, I mean, I know lots of people get them like this, but I actually get them to the extent that they make me pretty ill. So like the pain is really bad. It's not just like cramps, it's like so awful. And I have been to the doctors about it, about potential endometriosis, but that kind of needs to be checked out a little more, I think, because it's becoming a real problem. But yeah, that is not good for my mental health, because when I'm feeling so like awful anyway and sick and in so much pain, my mental health obviously drops as well. So that was happening, and I also had my assignments due like one after the other, which I got them both done. So my last one of the pair went off on Monday, so that was good. Last night I got a result back, which was amazing because I was having such a bad night last night, which I'll tell you about. But yeah, I got my grade back and I got a distinction for my creative writing piece, the last one I submitted, so yay! So yeah, these last few days have been really rough. I've been feeling like sick and low and just depressed and stressed. So it's been really hard, and I've been kind of making myself do the normal things, like obviously just normal things like showering and like getting ready for the day, get dressed. It's important that I'm not around the house in my pyjamas. Like for me, that is a thing, and I don't know why, but even if I'm obviously not going out, it makes a difference to me. Like if I put on a t-shirt and jeans in the house, even if I feel really low, that kind of helps, because I kind of feel more motivated and alive, and at least it feels like something is happening in the day, you know, I'm getting ready for a day. And I've been kind of, I just about kept up with the studying. It was hard because I had like these assignments due and I was so low, and there were points where I thought, I really don't think I'm going to be able to do this, but I just kept pushing through and just about managed it. Both of my assignments went in the last like 20 minutes of the deadline, so I got it really fine, but I managed it, so that's good. But I had been so low, and this is not a call out. Like I feel like I want to talk honestly about my mental health stuff, and sometimes that I feel like in being honest I need to kind of talk about the kind of response it gets, but I don't want to be like, oh, I'm calling people out, because it's an issue that people just aren't, they don't intend to be mean about it, it's just an ignorant kind of thing. So this is not a call out, but I had an issue where I was low these past few days and very stressed, and a member of my family took it really personally. I mean, like, I think that they thought that I was being like, they thought that I was being deliberately like rude to them and stroppy, and by the way, I wasn't rude. I'm not rude when I'm low, I'm just quite quiet, more quiet than usual, so I'm not so chatty, but I'm not like rude or anything. But yeah, I think that's a common thing, because I kind of vented a little bit about this on Twitter. I was kind of like, oh, like I just find it so annoying when people take your symptoms of your mental illness in a personal way and make it about them. But I think that's a real issue that a lot of us relate to, because loads of the responses I got were like, yeah girl, I get you. So But when you're the person like with the illness who's struggling with it, and the people around you kind of make it about them, that is just so incredibly frustrating. Like, I understand it can be annoying if, you know, someone in your family gets low sometimes and they have days where they're not very chatty and they're not much fun to be around, but I promise you it's worse for them when they feel that low. And we are trying, and we're not intentionally trying to be rude or anything like that, and we're not trying to make people feel like we don't care about them or anything. And I always find that the solution to this kind of misunderstanding that happens a lot, loads of people have shared their experiences with me, is people are afraid to ask us sometimes. Like, if you've got a friend who is depressed or mentally ill and you're feeling like, oh god, like they're not talking to me, like they don't like me anymore, like if you just say to them, have I upset you? Like, 99 times out of 100 that person will say, oh god, no, it's not you at all, I'm just feeling really low, like I'm sorry if I've made you feel like that, like I really care about you, I'm just a bit down. Like, that's usually it, you know. But yeah, so many people had the same experience, and it just drives me like up the wall, because this has been a recurring thing in my life with my mental health issues, where I don't want to do the whole, oh, it's easier to have a physical disability than a mental one, because that's absolutely not true. But I do think there's a difference between the way these things are kind of thought about. Like, they're not, when people say, oh, it's worse to have a mental illness because you can't see it, that's not necessarily true, because there's so much ableism towards people with physical disabilities as well. But the element of it not being, well, because it's different, something that you might get with a mental health issue that you might not with a physical health issue, is that it is not taken seriously because it isn't visible, you know. So you can be very low and feeling awful, but because the people around you, they only can take your word for it, so the only proof they've got is you saying, look, I feel really, really bad, and a lot of the time that just isn't good enough for them. Like, and for example, they wouldn't do that necessarily. Maybe they would if you had a broken leg or something. So say you woke up one day and you had a broken leg, and I think maybe then people wouldn't call you weak for not running a race that day, you know. They wouldn't call you selfish or boring because you wouldn't go running with them on the day when you broke your leg. But yeah, I want to be careful how I talk about that, because I don't want to be like, oh, it's easier to have a physical disability, because it's really not. It's the same issues but just different angles. I don't know if I'm explaining that right. But yeah, I had a lot of that, and I think it just kind of triggered me back to like a lot of invalidation issues I have. Like, I know I have issues with that kind of thing, and it just makes you feel like you're a burden because of your illness, which you hate yourself. Like, I hate being so low sometimes, and so like I just get so depressed and so low and like suicidal, and I hate it. And to feel like that is burdening other people because I'm not good company like that, and those people think, what's the point of them even being around me if I'm not going to be happy? It makes me feel like I only have worth to them when I'm bubbly and happy and, you know, good company. And sometimes I just want to be myself with my loved ones and just be like, I am feeling really, really bad right now, but I love you, and I'd like to just be quiet and just like not do much. I guess it's just the added feeling, isn't it, of feeling like you are letting everyone down and you're being an unlikable person because you're very low. And yeah, I mean, I understand it to a point, because when I get, for example, like really, really super high, I feel frustrated with the people around me who are like at normal pace, because I feel like, oh my god, you know, I want to do fun things, I want to like, you know, get up and get out there, and it's frustrating. But yeah, I just wish people would be more understanding with that kind of thing, and I do think a lot more work has to be done, because I don't necessarily think it comes out of cruelty. I just think it's this ignorance about the way mental health manifests. Like, you'll have someone say, oh, well, you can't be that ill because you watched the TV last night, and it's kind of like, why are you comparing me not being very chatty with me being able to watch the television? Watching the television requires I sit quietly and I watch something which I would have the energy to do. But being active socially and being like making jokes and laughing and like playing along, it's different. It's a different like set of things, isn't it? Like, to me that's quite obvious, but a lot of people don't get that, and you just feel very judged, and then it makes you feel like, it feeds into my filters of like feeling like I'm worthless and like I'm defective and like I'm a fraud, and like, oh, maybe I'm not that ill, and oh, I'm terrible company, and oh, no one's ever gonna love me because I'm so difficult. And if like your own family like don't want to be around you when you're low, you kind of think, well, how will anyone ever put up with me? You know, that's the kind of, yeah, Oh, this is getting deep, and I don't want to get into that stuff. But again, this is not a call out. Like, it's like I 100% love like my family and my friends, and like I know I often, like, I'm sure with other issues I deal with stuff badly. We're all ignorant about certain stuff, and I know I have been in the past about different things, so I'm not sitting here judging, but it's just an experience that I know a lot of us have, and it's just, oh, it's so frustrating, and I just wish people would understand and have a bit more compassion towards those who have these emotional issues, because it's not fun for us. We're not doing it for attention, we're not doing it for fun. Honestly, it's worse on the person who's got the thing. I understand it can be difficult for the family and friends of, but you don't have to make that person feel more bad and guilty about something which isn't hurting anyone, like just being low, you know? That doesn't have to be a thing. Okay, so I'm going to talk a little bit about challenging, which is kind of what we've been focusing on today. Again, there's 3 parts to this, so I'm not 100% certain of it yet. We're still kind of learning these skills, so I'm just going to kind of go through this. So it says here that during an episode, your emotions can become so strong that they begin to influence how you think and what you think. And many individuals with EID report that what they think is happening in their environment may be very different from what others see. Basically, when this disorder gets bad, your thoughts can become distorted, so you will overly focus on negative things which aren't necessarily true, and you will kind of spiral into them. So while I'm talking about these distorted thoughts, I think it's important to say for people who don't suffer with this disorder and are just watching this, when I talk about distorted thoughts and when we talk about it, a lot of the time it's not the same as a lot of people with mental illnesses or personality disorders are kind of just dismissed because they're told, oh, you know, you're not thinking straight because you're crazy, like your thoughts are distorted. That's not what this is talking about. It's not saying that you're crazy. This is talking about your self-talk that goes on within you. I think also a lot of the reason behind a lot of people's issues is actually trauma and invalidation. So this is certainly not saying that the thoughts surrounding that are distorted, but it's important for us as individuals with the disorder. This is not for other people, but for people with the disorder to be able to sort through our extra negative thoughts and just be more fair on ourselves, you know, because we've got a world of nastiness going on in our heads that we've picked up for whatever reason, and that's just always constantly there for us. And we don't even realise we're doing it. We need to learn to start like challenging that and realising that these thoughts are distorted. So we might be having an argument with someone and someone might say something to you like, oh, you're pathetic or you're worthless, and instead of us just being able to be like some people would just say, oh, well, that's absolute bullshit, you know. That person might say that, but that doesn't make it true. That's just something they are saying for whatever reason, but it actually doesn't speak about us and our experience. It probably speaks more about them, the fact they've said something like that, you know. It's not on the person who it's being said to. But because of our negative thought processes and already feeling like we're in some way defective or worthless or like we're the problem, or we've been told all our lives that we're crazy attention seekers, when someone would say something to us that other people could brush off, if someone says to us, oh, you're worthless or pathetic, it kind of rings true in our heads, because in the back of our minds we've always thought that. We're thinking, well, okay, well, if that person says I'm worthless, then maybe I am worthless, because all my life I felt like I'm worthless and pathetic, and surely this is just proving it right. Surely this person is just saying what everybody thinks. And then you start talking yourself into a downward spiral, because you're taking that one horrible comment from someone and it's just completely ruining everything. So the aim of this is to help us understand and be able to sort for ourselves through what thoughts are real and can be trusted and what thoughts are just rubbish and part of our own filters. So an example that someone in the group gave might be, this is not an example which I particularly like experienced, but I know lots of people did relate to this, is, for example, you might have plans with a friend and your friend might cancel last minute because they're not feeling well, and they might ring you up and just say, oh, sorry, I can't do it, I don't feel well, can we reschedule? But because of negative filters, because of fears of abandonment, because of feeling worthless and feeling like people don't actually want to be around you and people regard you as crazy or defective, in your head you might think, oh, well, the reason they're saying that is because they don't actually want to be my friend. They don't actually want to see me. And so for some people that will turn into, oh my god, like my friend doesn't actually care about me, I'm a burden, they're trying to get out of seeing me, when the actual reality of the situation is that what they've said is that they're not feeling very well. Why would we not trust that? If this person is a friend who cares about us and they've called and said they're not feeling well, that's why they're cancelling, most likely that is why. I mean, it's our own negative thoughts that make us think these awful things. They gave us a list here of common thought distortions and thinking errors, and I'm gonna go through all of them. I don't necessarily get all of these, but they're different ones people can get. So I won't again read from the sheets themselves, but I will talk about them all in turn. So the first one is all or nothing or black and white thinking, which is otherwise known as splitting. So I talk about splitting quite a lot, and this is something I experience. So this is basically thinking things are all or nothing, good or bad, you have to be perfect or you're a failure. So it's basically just regarding things in extremes, and usually for me this is in terms of self-worth. So I will have to be like a perfect good person and do everything right all the time, and if I don't manage that, then instead of just being someone who's trying but has made a mistake, I end up being a terrible, awful, bad person who has no worth and is a failure. And yeah, I just punish myself. It's always got to be that black and white split. I think this also links to like a fear of failure, because I know I have issues with perfectionism, and so it's that feeling of, well, if I'm not going to achieve like the best, like if I'm not going to get 100%, then in some ways I'm scared to even try, because to me it feels safer to not try than to try and fail. Whereas in reality, what are you losing by trying? What are you losing by trying? You should always try. So the next one is overgeneralizing or globalizing. So this is when you come to a general conclusion based on a single incident or a piece of evidence. So this is kind of like splitting again. It's that idea of extremes. So the example they've got here is using the word always or never. So if you ask someone out for a date and the person turns you down, you then think, oh, no one will ever want to go out with me. So the next one is selective negative focus, so a tunnel vision. So I do this. This is when you pick out the negative details in any situation and dwell on them excessively. So an example they had here is someone who's taken a test and say they got 95% out of 100, and instead of focusing on the 95 that they got and feeling proud of themselves, they torture themselves over the 5% and they don't find like joy and pride in it. And I think, again, it links to like perfectionism, so this is something I get as well. I feel like this is quite common with people who I talk to who are like overachieving kids. Like if you achieved very highly academically in school when you were younger, I feel like this is really hard to kind of train yourself out of when you're older. Especially my school. I mean, oh my god, there were good things about my school, but something I remember was like, this is just a tangent time, but we used to have science lessons, and it was like a school known for being so good for science, and all these doctors, you know, people go to this school and become doctors and things. And I actually found some of the like science department and like the whole vibe of that place really like, the only way I can describe it now, and I really don't know, it's kind of Tory-ish, and I'll say that because it's so like, it was so competitive and not valuing the work and the creativity. It was just like, I don't care about you as individuals, you just achieve. And there was this one teacher who would read out our results from tests in the class in like descending order, but it would be done to humiliate us basically, and they would say openly that people who weren't getting A's were basically letting the group down because we were in top science group and we were letting everyone down, and it was just like a situation of humiliation. And yeah, I feel like that was really, really messed up, and I really hate when schools do that. I just never think there's any reason for that. This is off topic, but what sort of a mean, nasty person reads out grades to humiliate their students? That's the kind of thing that Snape would do. Like, that's not a healthy way to encourage people to work harder. That's just going to make them feel really scared of failing. But yeah, because of that kind of mentality at school, and like, it was split. Like, there were nice, lovely teachers at my school, and I had lots of good times at my school, but in certain things like that, it was really drummed into us that you're at a grammar school, you know, you're supposed to be better, you know, you're supposed to be so smart, and it was actually kind of up itself, that attitude, to be honest. But when you feel like your value comes from the grades you're getting in the school rather than who you are as a person and an individual and what you're doing for the school in other ways, that's really depressing. So the next one is disqualifying the positive, and this is when you ignore evidence that challenges your negative attitude, often finding quick ways to discount any positive information. So a good example of this, well, and the example they gave here is someone might compliment you on your appearance or your outfit, and you might immediately just disqualify it by thinking, well, either that person is just saying that, they don't really mean it, or that person has really poor taste. The example in here is actually the person has poor taste, which I think is cruel. For me, I think I've spoken about this before, but it's like when my family say to me, oh, you know, you're so, like when they praise me and when they're nice to me and they say, oh, you're a lovely person and, you know, you'll be happy in the future and you'll find someone you love. I tell myself, instead of thinking, you know, what lovely things to say, like I'm going to believe them, I think to myself, well, they're only saying that because they're my family and they have to say that because they're my family, and if they weren't related to me, they'd probably hate me and not want me around. Another one is selective abstraction, which is when you take a statement or event out of context and arrive at a gross misinterpretation. So the example they have here is that one of your friends tells a funny story about a recent misunderstanding that you had with that person, but you might interpret it as them getting at you and trying to pick at you, when really you might be in a social situation where everyone's in a really good mood and a happy vibe and everyone's just laughing and joking, but you might take that really personally. So the next one is jumping to conclusions. So it's if you jump to a conclusion that is not justified by the facts or the situation. So different elements of this, and one of them is mind reading, not literally mind reading, but it's when you make an assumption about what the other person is thinking. So you might say, for example, it says here, like, your boss might not give you a promotion, and in your head you might tell yourself, oh, that's because the boss doesn't like me, you know, they haven't given me a promotion because they don't like me, when in reality that's not the information you have. All the information is that you don't have a promotion. You don't know what they think about you as a person at all. I also think that something good about this one, and something that I use, is that it actually helps me in communication with people, because I personally, my perceptions are usually quite good about, I'm quite attuned to that kind of thing because of different experiences in my life. I've had to become very attuned to that, I'm quite good at it. But it does help me communicate my thoughts to people, so it means you can address issues with people who want to have those conversations. Some people are very hostile and don't want to, but it means you can really get across that there's an issue without blaming the person, you know, and it can be really helpful, because instead of, I mean, let's put this in like a social justice perspective, because I talk about that quite a lot, but say someone might say something that is potentially biphobic. So instead of me saying to them, you're a terrible person, you're a horrible biphobic person, which they may or may not be, depending on, you know, what their intent was. Is it something they've learned? Is it something they actually think about and believe? Are they being nasty? Are they just trying to tell a joke? You just don't know. I think instead of being like, you're a nasty person, the best way to approach it is to say, hey, this to me is offensive because, and like this is why, I don't know if you're aware, and just keep the tone kind of neutral. And I feel this can also help in like arguments as well. It makes communication easier, because if someone has hurt you, for example, like someone you love, you can communicate it to them in a calmer way. So look, this is, you make clear that this is your perception and this is what I'm taking from this and this is what I feel is going on, but you're not dictating what is going on, because often I think misunderstandings are just two different people's perceptions of something, and so much of an argument is what you expect the other person to be thinking. So doing this mind reading thing negatively, often when people who care about each other a lot and love each other a lot have arguments, it's because of these cross wires and assuming different things because of different thought processes in our own heads. But if we could kind of detach and talk stuff through calmly in that way and realise that our experience is valid, but might be different from the other person's experience, you can make a lot more headway with that. And yeah, I found that really healthy in other aspects of my life. So the next part of the jumping to conclusions category is negative predictions and self-fulfilling prophecies. So basically you kind of defeat yourself with this. So you think something bad's gonna happen, so then you react in a certain way and it makes something bad happen. Like I might think, oh no, I'm so anxious, I can't do such and such a thing and it's going to ruin everything and I'm going to have a bad day and it's going to go terribly. And because of this prophecy, this thinking in my head, I then make myself more stressed and make myself have that bad day, and then the bad day happens and then my head tells myself, oh, you were right all along, when in reality it was not true. So another one which I relate to is minimization, and I've not really thought about this one before, but it really resonates with me. So this is when you choose to ignore information. So the opposite one is magnification, which is like making mountains out of molehills. So if you, for example, it says here, if your partner turns down your request for sex by saying he or she is tired, you then believe that they are having an affair and will soon leave you, which seems a little extreme. But yeah, that's an example of just taking something that happens and like catastrophizing, yeah, that's the word, and making it 10 times worse. But yeah, anyway, minimization, which is a huge one for me, is that you don't want to believe the bad thing, you don't want to believe the truth, so you just kind of ignore it, basically. So an example here is that, like, someone's partner is, like, obviously cheating, like, they've had information about it, they've seen photos, they know it, but they still tell themselves that this person is working late, you know, it's not something they would do, they'd never do that. So it's kind of like denial, really. And I think for some people it kind of helps us to function, because we don't want to think about how potentially bad certain things are, so we just kind of play them down, and that hurts us because we then don't get away, we don't break away from the thing which is painful and hurtful, because we just tell ourselves, no, we're so scared of being abandoned and being alone that it's like, no, it can't be that bad, it's just in my head, I'm just ignoring it, this is totally normal, this is fine. And that can be really, really dangerous, but a lot of us do it, and it is that fear of abandonment and feeling like you're worthless and couldn't cope on your own and don't feel like an adult. So it can put you very much in the power of other people. Okay, so the next one is emotional reasoning. So you accept your emotions as evidence for the way things really are. So that's the I feel, therefore I am thing. So, like, a good example here is you feel fearful and unsafe when you enter a room, therefore you decide the room is a dangerous place. Which, yeah, I really get that, because I can't do, I can't be in a room of people or like public transport or something unless I feel like I have an exit or somewhere to get to. And in my head, it's my own anxiety which is like the issue here, but it's like the thing itself is what I have the fear of. So I won't go on a plane. Like, I've not been on a plane since I was a little girl, like when I was 7 years old. Not that we have the money to go on a plane anyway, but yeah, I've not been on a plane, and I wouldn't, because I regard them as like a fearful place, because I'd feel like I was trapped and, oh no, they're dangerous and they're scary. But essentially the actual issue is my own reaction to that. It's my own anxiety, that's the problem. There is nothing inherently scary, like rationally, about a room full of people sitting down, is there? It's my own issues, it's not the place. There's also the obvious, like, I feel worthless, therefore I am, which is silly, because just because you have those negative thoughts or people have said certain things to you doesn't make them true. But yeah, I think a lot of the time if we feel like we're worthless or pathetic or we're crazy, we just believe those things to be true, because that's our brain and that's our frame of reference. So yeah, that's kind of what this work is about challenging, I guess. I'm just going to go through a few more. There's actually more than this, but I'm not going to go through the whole set. I'm just going to talk about the ones that kind of I can talk about because I relate to. So there's one here called the Fallacy of Fairness. So where you believe life should be fair and you become upset when injustice occurs. So yeah, this is me essentially. I genuinely, like, I don't actually think this is abnormal. I think this is something that is normal or should be normal. I do get upset when things aren't just, and sometimes, like, genuinely, not to be like an emo, but when I think about certain things in the world, if you think about it too much, it's deeply upsetting. It really genuinely is upsetting, because things aren't fair, the world isn't fair. And I think what they're trying to say with this is that, you know, the world doesn't owe you fairness. I mean, I think we ought to, talking on a level here, obviously in society we need to create a society where it is fair, you know, and it is kind. But what this means is that the world is not a fair place. Obviously we should try to make it so, but us freaking out that it isn't fair and getting upset about it isn't changing anything, is it? The world is not fair. I think that's a truthful thing. It should be, of course it should be, and we should all be working to try and make it as fair as possible, but it isn't. And I think we need to be able to understand that although things, of course, they should be fair, sometimes they're not going to be, and we can't just totally break down when we think about these things. I mean, if anything, we need to try and do what we can to change things and make them fairer, but it's no good just like breaking down and thinking that things are always going to be fair and then being disappointed when they're not, because unfortunately they're not, and that's just the sad truth. But we can make them that way, I do believe that. Okay, the control fallacy. You believe you should be able to control everything that happens to and around you. This one isn't as creepy as it sounds. For me, you know, I have emetophobia, so I fear being ill, and it's not actually I've realised it's not the actual being sick or the being ill which is the fear, it's the fear of being out of control of my body. It is that out of control feeling. It's going back to my filters, bringing me back to times when I felt worthless and powerless and like a scared child, and I had no power and I couldn't do anything about it, and it brings me back to that place. So that is why illness brings up that fear in me. It's also kind of why I don't have like full-blown OCD. I have like I used to have it much worse, but I used to have elements of that that were a part of my issues. But again, that's a control thing, isn't it? It's desperately trying to control the environment and think, okay, everything's got to be clean, everything's got to be hygienic, everything's got to be perfect, and then everything will be okay. But you can't control those things. Nobody can, and it's just not healthy to believe that you can. Oh, okay, actually I lied, there's two more. So there's blaming. So what you can do is you either hold others responsible for your pain, or you blame yourself for every problem you run into. My issue is that I tend to blame myself for a lot of things that I shouldn't be blamed for. So for me, I do blame myself for a lot, and I know I shouldn't. I'm working on not blaming myself, but throughout my life I've kind of sacrificed a lot and stepped back a lot and taken a lot, and it's kind of become normal in some respects. So I'm kind of working on not taking that on my shoulders, and if something bad happens, like if something bad happens to me, it's not my fault that the bad thing has happened. I didn't make it happen, I didn't deserve it. It isn't something that happened because I actually wanted it to happen, or I was trying to like make it happen and make these bad things happen to me. Like, I don't deserve that. It's just a bad thing that's happened. It's not some sort of awful punishment. I don't need to apologise for everything. Like, I often find I apologise for too much. I take too much, sometimes just to make life easier. And again, it's like that self-sacrifice and subjugation filters, isn't it? It's feeling like, you know, life will be easier if you take the blame and let other people off the hook, because then they won't leave you even though they've mistreated you. I really need to stop blaming myself for stuff which isn't my fault and learn to hold other people accountable without feeling hideously guilty. And last of all is superstitious thinking, so it's illogical cause and effect relationships. For example, I cannot enjoy anything or it will be taken away. And I've spoken about this before. It's that feeling of like the fear of actually when I feel like happy and when I really enjoy something, and that almost like that hyper like hysterical fear almost of, oh my god, this isn't gonna last, it's gonna just get ruined, and then because I'm thinking that I ruin it myself. So those are some of the common thought distortions, and I wanted to be clear about those individually and talk about them in a bit of depth, because I feel like so many of us are invalidated and told that because we have a disorder, oh, you're not thinking straight. And I've had this used against me numerous times in like political discussion, all that kind of thing. It's not, never do that. Don't be that person that invalidates someone's point of view because of their mental illness, because usually it doesn't really have a correlation, to be honest. And even if it does, I mean, that's not your place to do that. But this is not saying that people with mental illnesses are crazy and you can't believe them, like their thoughts are all distorted. It's not like that. It's that our internal filters often hurts us the most because we blame ourselves for stuff and we put up with too much. But I think because we've been so invalidated, the reason this is important is that a lot of us don't trust in our own thoughts and opinions. We don't trust in our own perceptions because we've been told we're crazy, because we've been invalidated, because we've been taught to mask it so we don't bother people. We end up having this really weird sense of our own like identity and our own reality, and even our own memories. Sometimes we doubt our own existence because we've been so invalidated. So that's why it's so important to get these distorted thoughts and kind of test them when we get them, challenge them, because a lot of the time they're just stuff we've learned and they are hurting us. So yeah, it was really important to me that this is not used to invalidate people who suffer with these things, because usually the reason we suffer with these things is because of the invalidation, so it's like a cycle. So yeah, don't be the person that does that. So I'm going to read you, just before we go, you know you're using the skill of challenging when. So you are learning to differentiate thoughts from behaviours, you are learning to be less perfectionistic, you are putting life events and feelings into perspective. You are becoming independent and not comparing yourself to others. This is a huge one for me because, like I've said before, I'm at a very different place to lots of other people my age. A lot of the people I knew who went to grammar school are like doing these like amazing jobs and being fantastic, and it's not a jealousy, because I feel genuinely happy for them and I love it. I love seeing how well they're doing, but I do compare myself to them in the sense that I think, oh god, like, am I like awful compared to them? Like, am I some sort of failure? When in reality, if I challenge that thought, no, I'm not. I'm doing good things with my life. I'm doing a degree, I'm doing a YouTube channel, I'm trying to be a good person and learn, I'm trying to grow every day, and I think I'm doing okay, you know, I'm doing alright. I also use that thought when I'm doing this therapy and like I hit a part where I kind of think, oh my god, that really hurts, that's too emotional, that's too raw, I don't want to access that place, it's too much, it will bring me back to a bad place. I kind of remind myself that, like, I am independent, I'm a young woman, I can handle this, it's my life, I don't have to feel guilty about this. I am becoming independent, and a part of becoming more independent and getting control of my life means dealing with this stuff, and it's hard, but I think I'm going to thank myself for it later. You allow yourself to make mistakes and learn from them. This is something that actually being part of online like social justice stuff has helped me with immensely. The idea that we all absorb stuff from society which maybe isn't good, and stuff that we've just never questioned before. It doesn't make us bad people, but when we learn differently, when we get more information, when we become less ignorant, we can change. We don't have to stick to that. It's okay to apologise. It's okay to say, oh, I used to think such and such and that was bad and I don't think that anymore. Like, that's really good, and it, being online's helped me do that, so it's actually kind of helped me with this part of the therapy. You correct your distorted thoughts. That's what I'm trying to do and what this video is kind of trying to explain. You can be happy and like yourself whether someone else likes you or not. You know you are not telepathic, you cannot read others' minds. Yeah, this does not mean like literally, it just means that you can't tell someone's intent, really. So all you can do is explain how that thing made you feel and be open and communicate, but you can't read that person's mind. Disagreement does not mean rejection, dislike or anger. It just means you see things differently, and that is okay. This is important for me because I come from a family of very strong women, some very opinionated people, and in a lot of ways, I've spoken about this before, it's wonderful because it's made me the person I am. It's made me speak up about certain things, even though in other ways it doesn't suit my personality because I am so hugely emotional. But I just feel like I should. And sometimes it can feel like when you have a disagreement with someone like you really care about something, it feels like, oh my god, like that's it, we're just done forever, like they hate me now, we think differently, I don't agree with them so they hate me, we'll never be friends. But actually that's really, really unhealthy, and you should never be made to think like that. You know, that's not something that ever should have gone into your head in the first place, and you can unlearn that. You don't have to feel bad or guilty for disagreeing with someone you care about. In fact, if you love someone and they're your friend, for example, like if your friend does something and it hurts you, it doesn't mean that you hate them or they're going to leave you, and it shouldn't anyway if they're a good friend. If you just say to them, look, that thing you did hurt, or I have this issue, it shouldn't be the end of a relationship, and if it is, then I would question if that is a healthy thing to be part of in the first place. You choose to look at things in shades of grey, yeah, so basically that's trying not to split, and if we do split, to kind of consider the middle area. Your feelings change when your thinking changes. Again, that's something that I've learned through my course and through social justice and having conversations with people. Your feelings should change based on your thoughts and your information. You accept the fact that life is not always fair. You might prefer that it were, but you accept that it is not, and that you may be able to help make life a little more fair. I love that, and I fully agree with that. I think that it's unhealthy for us to think that the world is fair because we're going to be disappointed, but we should always strive to try and make it more fair. And I feel like that's almost like a duty. It's not part of this video really, but I do see that as kind of a duty. Like, if things aren't fair, then we need to like do our best and try and make things better for the next generation. I don't get people who say things like, oh, well, I had to deal with this, so why shouldn't the next generation? Why would you want the next generation to deal with it? If there's something wrong in this generation, then fight as hard as you can and make it better for the next one, and gradually the world will hopefully be a better place. You ask the questions, what else could this mean, and why should I assume the negative? I need to do that because I do think negatively a lot. And you recognise the positives about yourself and life in general rather than dwelling on the negatives. So this is something I've started to do. I've started to like write down stuff that I love, and when I was really down last night, I had such a bad night, I immediately just started watching The Umbrella Academy. Bit obsessed. A bit is an understatement, actually. I'm very obsessed. And they're getting a season 2, can you believe it? I was so excited when I heard that. Wonderful. But yeah, I need to just think about the positive stuff. So when I feel really, really awful, I just need to think about all the good things and list them and do something that I enjoy, and just remind myself that there is happiness and there are good things out there, and nothing is all bad, ever. Nothing is ever all bad. So, thank you for watching. This has been very long, as per usual. I really appreciate all your comments. Even if I don't reply to them, I do read them. I do mean to reply. I'm just getting a bit busy with my course, but I am reading them and I will keep replying, and, you know, it means a lot that people are relating. And it's interesting that people are relating who don't have emotional intensity disorder, and that's actually quite nice that other people can relate, obviously in a slightly different way, but yeah, it feels good. There's some good comments on these videos, so I love you loads. I will see you really soon. Yeah, I hope you're watching this with good intentions. Most people are. I haven't had many weird comments. I got one weird comment that was swiftly deleted, which I did see, but yeah, there are some odd people out there who yeah, less said about them the better, I think, but there are some very, very strange and negative people out there. Okay, I love you loads, and I will see you really soon. Please be good to yourselves, and yeah, love you. Bye!